Welcome to the channel that lifts you up and help you feel more empowered in different areas of your life. In this video, we're dealing with money management, and I would like to delve in the subject of term insurance. Today, Glenn is joining me, and he's a financial advisor as well as an authorized infinite banking practitioner. And of course, he offers his clients customized services that will help them to be more efficient in their finances. And for me, it's all about being more efficient. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, Genese. Glad to be back.
Yes, and so glad to have you, Glenn. In the last few videos, we dealt with cash value insurance, which may not be for everyone. And, I was thinking, and, I did mention to you that there may be persons who really see the value of insurance, but definitely they do not want a cash value insurance. And here's why. Because I find that there are a few people who they don't want their investment in an insurance company, right? And I've heard so many people tell me, they're saying, Genese, I want to get term insurance and invest the rest with my own investment option. And because this channel is all about education and helping people to make informed decisions, I really wanted to spend some time just getting into term insurance. And for those who have questions about term insurance too, right? So of course, I started looking at some questions, and Glenn, of course, we did discuss that we have to definitely break this up in part two, because I have too many questions for you, right? So what I want to do, I don't want these videos to be too long, right? And then people lose their interest, because this information we're giving is going to help them for a lifetime. And I want to make sure that they're engaged. So what we're going to do, we're going to have part one and we're going to have a part two. And if there are questions that you have been thinking about, please go ahead, type in the comments below, because we'd be happy to answer those questions for you. And if we don't get those questions answered, if we think that there are more questions that we can answer and it might be beneficial to others, we could have a part three, right? And we'd be happy to do that as well. So Glenn, to start off our question and answer today, my first question for you is, what is term insurance?
What is term insurance? Well, you know what? It's just like the name says, term. So what that tells me is it has an end date.
Okay.
Right? Now, to expand on that a little bit more, you've got different types, like a term 10, term 20, term 30, and term 40. Those indicate the periods of cost structure, but the end date is generally somewhere around 80 or 85, right? So term has an end date.
Sorry to cut you, Glenn, but for those persons who really don't understand the language of insurance, when you say term 10, 20, what does a 10 and what does a 20 represent?
Good question. And you're right. Sometimes I take things for granted. So it's a good question. So the 10 and the 20 represents the period of time for which your costs are fixed, right? Or I should clarify that a little bit better. The period of time for which your initial costs are fixed, because in most cases, after the 10 years, the price jumps up noticeably, we'll say, to severely. The cost will also be fixed, but the first 10 year is going to be the cheapest you'll have it, because it's based on your age now, right? Okay. So what you do is with that 10 year, you've got a locked in price. So unlike your car insurance, which if you've got a vehicle, you're used to going up each year, unlike your house insurance, which if you've got a home, you realize that goes up each year. Those insurances are pooled costs, right? So as there's more and more claims, accidents, fire, floods, those increase. Your personal life insurance, and there's another big key for having your own, if you qualify for a term that says you're going to pay for 10 years, $40 a month, then when that 10 years is up, if you keep it, it would be $180 a month. Then those are fixed costs once you get the contract. Nothing outside can change that. No matter how much money the company's lost or made or how many disasters there's been, that is fixed, frozen, and contractual, right? So you get that in either a 10-year period, and then it jumps up, But even when it jumps up, you know exactly what it's going to cost for the next 10-year period and so on and so forth until expiry. So they do expire, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And thanks for clarifying that. And I should have been more specific when I say term 10, term 20. And when I say, for those who don't understand, I was thinking, is it 10 months? Is it 10 weeks? And I'm glad you specified 10 years, right? So you're saying that we can have an insurance 10 years, 30 years. And how much did you say again? 10, 20. So 10, 20 years.
I've done as long as 40-year term,
40
right?
years. Okay.
Where someone wanted to lock in their cost for 40 years. What else that you deal with can you lock in your cost for so long? I can't think of anything. There may be something, but I can't think of it. So sometimes, you know, with all the things in life that are going on, you know, now mind you, the shortest term is the cheapest initially,
Okay.
right? It's the cheapest initially. But one of the things I'll say, and most of the times it's someone with either a spouse or a family. And I generally ask them, 10 years from now, if you've got kids, if your kids are in a spot where, you know, they're a little older, they're in activities now, do you think they're going to cost more than they do right now? Yes. Do you want your insurance costs going up at that point? Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no. And then, you know what, we determine from them. So I help people determine what makes the most sense for them. Not always right this minute, but just overall for their plan, right? So, yeah.
Well, this may sound like a contradicting question, but do you have such a thing that's called term life insurance?
Okay, it's a little bit of a play on words, but I'll explain to you. There's been a few different iterations over the years. So there's some that have term life. Okay, a couple companies still offer that. And what that is it's term to 100, basically is what it is.
Right.
Right. So it's built on a permanent insurance platform. So stuff like that doesn't really fall under term. It falls more into permanent. Now, and the reason is because the price isn't going to change and it goes right up till age 100, which should outlive you, right? Now, even with the term life, there's term life that's just straight term life. And while it can be a great thing because you've got predictability, I like the ones, what they call term life with values. There's a little bit of guaranteed cash. Again, it's not investment, it's just guaranteed cash. And the reason for that is this. I realize people can be good most of their life, going 30, 40 years, paying this thing. And then in their 70s, something might happen with their cash flow and a little hiccup. And if you miss 2 or 3 months, it's done. Well, if you've got no value whatsoever in it, the thing that you've been so good at taking care of for so long, you lose because circumstances come and hit you out of nowhere. And at that time of life, it generally happens when people are on a fixed income, right? So it's available, you can do it. I generally get them to say, you know what, let's look at the one with a little cash value, because then if it happens, it has a little bit of cash where it can take care of itself till you can again. So you don't just lose everything because of a bad couple of months.
Okay, interesting. So what does term insurance cover really?
You know what, it's basically life insurance. You can get term critical illness insurance as well, which would give you the 10, the 20, or right up till age 75, or even up till age 100. But most of the time when you hear term insurance, they're referring to life insurance. And it's basically if you die outside of a couple of reasons, act of war or committing a crime. Also, committing suicide within the first 2 years of the policy being issued or reinstated, right? Now, not endorsing suicide, it does pay out after 2 years. But if it's done within the first 2 years, it's a definite no payment.
Okay. So pretty much term insurance just covers your life. So when I die, it does cover my life. So
if you die within the period you have the policy, yes.
Okay. But it could cover the cost of somebody's mortgage though, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. You're right. So typically when you get a mortgage, you always have to be offered mortgage insurance, right? You don't have to take it from the lender, but you're going to be offered. Most of the guys selling it don't have an insurance license or a clue. All right, so I shouldn't say most. A lot of people don't. Some guys actually and ladies actually go and make sure they know what they're selling, but a lot don't. It's an added thing they have to offer. If you take it, great. If not, no big deal. Now, here's the bottom line. Any insurance you have in force when it's needed and pays out is better than not having anything. But why we generally use term insurance or recommend term insurance, I'll ask people, our folks that I deal with, I say, hey, is this the last house you're ever going to buy? And for some, they can definitively say yes, but they're a very few minority. Most are going to say, I don't know, or no, we're going to move to something else eventually. So my question is, okay, would you like to, let's say it's a $500,000 mortgage. Would you like to get a $500,000 piece of coverage from the institution that I borrowed from and know that when I keep paying down this mortgage, the insurance goes down, right? So what if we have a crazy market like we do now and you've had your house for 10 years and your house is now worth $750? Maybe you don't want to sell it. But what if you want to take out some equity? Now you got to get more insurance for that added piece, because if you pay down that 500,000, maybe now you owe 250, 200. Well, that's how much insurance you have. Whereas if you've done your own term, that term is still at 500,000, right? So having your own gives you greater flexibility. It doesn't go down in what's owing, because to those people who like to power it down, let's say, you know, we're one of those families who say, no, we're going to power it down and we're down to 80 grand and one of us dies. Then guess what? 80 grand does pay out.
Right.
Right. So it's almost a punishment for being really engaged in trying to get it done. Whereas the person who came to me and I set them up with a term policy with the intent to cover off that mortgage, if the same scenario happened, that survivor gets $500,000. Not 80 grand.
Right.
Right. So it's generally better to get your own. I'm gonna almost say almost always better to get your own, but I'll say it's generally better to get your own because you have control over it. You own it and it follows you, not the mortgage. So even though you get it with the intent to take care of the mortgage, you get it on you. So if you get rid of that mortgage, and whatever, you put in a lot of whatever, you get a big inheritance, you still have the insurance. It's just an asset to your family as long as it's in force, right? Because it's a tax-free payout as long as you die while it's still in force, right? So it just gives you greater flexibility. If you decide maybe we're gonna get another mortgage, we're gonna get a bigger house, now you don't have to go reapply for another one because you've still got this policy in place.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm sure that there are a few people still who are saying, you know what, I don't believe in insurance. What would you say to these people to say, okay, you don't believe in life insurance, you don't believe in an insurance. What would you say to them to let them know important that they should at least get a term insurance? Why would that be at least important for them?
I'm going to be quite frank. I call bull. You know why? I've consulted my colleagues, and in all the death benefits I've delivered, I have never had one person say, don't believe in it, Glenn, refuse to take the check, right? So it's not that you don't believe in it, you don't want to pay for it.
Okay.
That's really what the answer is. It's not that you don't believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, you don't believe in collecting proceeds from anybody who's died who has insurance either, right?
Okay.
So yeah, I call bull on that one. And here's the thing, Genese, I've been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
I'm at the point where I show people where they're exposed and show them solutions to cover that up. And I've been doing this long enough where if I don't think you want to do it, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to make sure you see your blind spots. But if you don't want to do it, guess what? We're all adults. You get to choose for your family. I get to choose for my family. I think enough of mine to make sure I'm protected. So if I'm not around, the things that we want to do can financially still be done. You don't want to do that? That's up to you. What I've learned is I'm not here to help everybody. It would be nice, but it's not the reality. I'm here to help the people who recognize they have a need and want to do something about it. The rest who are in different various stages, I'll talk to you, but I'm not here to convince you. And if you don't want to, that's cool. I'll move on because it's a better fit when I find those who are ready anyway.
And that's an interesting concept, Glenn. But what I'm realizing, just looking on myself personally, it comes back to education, right? So if we go back to how many years ago when you first approached me about getting a critical illness insurance, right? And I refused it. It wasn't, I don't think it was a matter of fact that I didn't want to pay or I didn't think it was important. I just didn't think I needed it at the time. And it was all about education for me, right? So I think a lot of times people don't take things because of lack of knowledge. And if we could educate them in such a way to say, all right, we're not forcing you to take it, but here is some information. Let's educate you on what the possibilities are, why you would need it, why this would turn out a good decision for you to say yes to in the end. So, and as they get this information, they think it through. So if they hear my information, as I said, I mentioned it first in a video before, but so when you approached me about critical illness, I mean, I think I was in my 30s at the time, or my 20s, I can't remember, but right.
Yeah.
So when you approach me, I'm like, I don't need a critical illness insurance. And I'm thinking about critical illness are going to would cover stuff like stroke would be one of the stuff that I'll be thinking about, because I'm thinking in my family, stroke is in my family, but everyone who had a stroke in my family, my grandma, my granduncle, and my mom, it was over the age of 50. So for me, I'm like, okay, I won't take out a critical illness if I'm close to 50, so probably about 45, right? I'm going to put it really close. I'm like, I'm not going to pay for something that I'm going to need right now. But listen, life didn't happen like that for me. I had a stroke a few years after, right? For different reasons, right? So if I had taken out a critical illness when you had approached me then, I would have benefited from it, but I didn't think of it at the time, right? So if I had gotten some education and said, Genese, well, it doesn't only cover stroke, right? It covers other things that could happen at any point in time in your life. So, and that's why I am so passionate about education now. Educate people. What are the possibilities? Why do you need to handle your money better? Why do you need to have investments? Why do you need to take out an insurance? Why do you need to pay off some of the debts when you can? Why do you need to plan for the future, right? So now what I'm talking about is education. So why would it be important for someone to get at least a term insurance now in their life? So that's my question.
Genese, I'm glad you brought up your experience, and I'll tell you why from my side of things, why I've said that. You're right. Education is so necessary. However, if you're not in the frame of mind to hear it, you're not going to hear it. And the more I talk, the more it'll be like blah, blah, blah. So as I said, where I am right now, I'm smart enough to realize when this is not going anywhere, I'll leave it alone for now. But here's the beauty of it. Things like this that we do, that people can watch at their own leisure, that have no pressure or perceived pressure attached to it, because you can't watch a video and then have me force you to buy insurance in a video.
Right.
So there's educational pieces for those who are ready to hear about it, right? Because the reality is, at the time, yeah, you were young, you were single. I'm wired a little different. I tell most people, I got insurance in my 20s when I had no children, no spouse, because I always had the mind that I'm going to go help take care of my parents. So if I'm not around for some freak accident, I'm going to make sure it's done. Always wired weirdly. Any insurance I sell, if I qualified, I bought it first for me, or eventually I had a family for my family. So if someone goes, so do you have it? I'm like, yeah. And if I don't, I'll tell you why I didn't qualify for it. Not that I didn't get it because I didn't want it, why I didn't qualify. So I've always been wired a little bit weirdly that way, as far as most people see. But again, as I said, it's good to have pieces like this where you can get information without having that feeling that someone's going to push you into anything. But I'm also at the point in my life where I'm so busy with the people who are ready, who need even more information or just some clarity, that those are the people I focus on. I don't focus on those who show me that they're not ready. I'll approach, we'll talk, but I'm not going to be saying, hey, we should, no, I'm not going to do that. And I realize while there is a need for that, that's just not my function at this time. So that's why we do things like this. We can put out educational pieces so people can consume at their leisure and learn a little bit more. And if they're curious enough and want more information, then they can reach out and contact. Now understand, I'm not the type of person where if you ask me a question, it means that you have to buy. I realize just like everything in life, there's phases. Sometimes you want more clarity, sometimes you want more information. But if you
Mhm.
initiate that, then I at least realize that there's some curiosity in your mind, and I will gladly give anyone information as I do every single month. There's a lot of people I talk to who I know are not ready for to make any moves. And I know they're not ready even before they tell me they're not ready because I've been doing this long enough. But if you want to listen and learn, I'll be there to give you information. What I was getting at is I'm not going to be trying to push you into something you're not ready for,
Okay,
right?
makes sense.
So I'm glad you gave your example because, let's face it, Genese, we've known each other since we were kids, but at the time you weren't ready. And you're right, there's no real reason at that point why you should have. And we like being busy. You're like, oh, that's not something I need right now. And that's the general consensus that most people have. And it is what it is, right? Lesson learned, you realize from your situation that, boy, I wish I had. But unfortunately for a lot of us, we're going to go through more of that. Not to go too long, but here's when people generally will pay attention. Something happened to someone close to them. They saw the fallout and they went, okay, I didn't think this could happen to me, but
Mm.
since it happened here, maybe now I should go get some information, right? But again, like I said, we do things like this because we want people to have the information, right? And it's great for them to have it when they're ready for it.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Glenn. And have you ever found someone that you say to that person, listen, I would not recommend term insurance for you. So I want to know, are there cases where you would not recommend term insurance?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. So, for example, if it's someone, it depends on a lot of times what they can qualify for. It depends on age, depends on resources, right? Again, if they've got resources, let me back up for a second. If we're talking insurance, life insurance, I will always recommend getting some, depending on the amount. Now, for the most part, if you can afford it, I point to permanent for many reasons. We won't get into today because today's really about term. But there's times when I say, looking at your situation, you can do the term, but if we do an adjustment or we do a combination, there's a little permanent and term, it would be better for you, especially when the next 10 years hit, because then there'll be some residual built-in value there. So that's the only time I generally won't recommend is because there's a recommendation of something more permanent, as opposed to saying you shouldn't get insurance at all. Right?
Okay.
I might
Perfect.
say, I'm sorry, one more example. For people who bought a car, so you've spent 50 grand on a car and they say get the life and disability here,
Mhm.
those guys, I'll say, don't even bother. Or if you've already signed the paperwork, let us quickly replace it because I can probably get you 10 times the coverage for the same price you're paying. That's not attached to a car. Again, same thing for when you switch the car, it doesn't go away, you still got your coverage. So those are kind of the times, but there's always because I have something else insurance related in mind for them.
Okay.
All right.
Great. And would there be times when you look at someone and say, definitely, for sure, term insurance would be best for you? Do you find that
Yes.
you've found times like that?
Yes. And again, going back to permanent, I'm a infinite banking par whole life guy. Love it. Fantastic tool. Most people I think should eventually get it. However, like a lot of things, even though that nice house would be lovely right now, I got apartment money. All right.
Okay.
And even though I could probably make the down payment, my life and what's going on is not showing sustainability for paying my mortgage and keeping it. So in that case, I would say to someone, you know what? Get the term insurance because what we're trying to do is get you and your family in a better place. And if you spend more than you can afford right now, it may feel good initially, but it's not really helping. So let's get the term, try to get caught up on some other bills, get some things, toned down. Again, depends on the circumstance. And then as time goes by, term has this, and we'll talk about this probably in part two, convertibility. Term has the built-in thing where you can eventually turn it into some permanent, regardless of your health, built into your
Okay.
contract. But that's going to be a part two thing because
For sure.
Get you guys,
Yeah. And you know,
get
it's
you guys
just
to tune in.
amazing. It's just amazing how time goes fast. I mean, I can't believe how long we've been discussing this. I mean, the topic has been so interesting for me. I didn't realize we're gone so much. So I think we're just going to wrap it up for today.
Yes.
We're going to say, let's close off part 1, and then we're going to continue the next time with part 2. I mean, I have so much more questions to answer for you to ask you, Glen. And I'm sure people, as you're talking, they're thinking about questions that they have for themselves. So let's just wrap it up for today. If you have questions, you're watching, put it in the comments below. Just put it in the comments below. I think we're going to need a part 3 at the rate that we're going today. Yes.
Quite possible.
Right. So that's all for today. And we're going to say bye for now. And we will see you in the next video. Don't forget, subscribe, like, leave your comments. We want to hear from you. All right. See you next time.
See you next time, folks.